Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskritya
Narayanam Namaskritya.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Tato Jayamutirayet.
Tato Jayamudire.
Canto 2, Chapter 4, Text 24. 2424. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Namastasmai Bhagavate
Namastasmai Bhagavate
Vasudevaya Vedhasa.
Vasudevaya Vedasa.
Vedase. Papur Jnanam Ayam Saumya.
Jnanamayam Saumya.
Yadmukam Bhuru Hasavam.
Yadmukam Bhuruhasavam.
Namastasmai Bhagavate
Namastasmai Bhagavate
Vasudevaya Vedhase.
Vasudevaya Vedasa.
Papur Jnanam Ayam Saumya.
Jnanam Ayam Saumya.
Yadmukam Bhuru Hasavam.
Yadmukam Bhuruhasavam.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto Srila Vyasadeva, the incarnation of Vasudeva who compiled the Vedic scriptures. The pure devotees drink up the nectarian transcendental knowledge dropping from the lotus-like mouth of the Lord. Pretty interesting metaphor. Purport. In pursuance of the specific utterance, Vedhase, or the compiler of the system of transcendental knowledge, Srila Sridhar Swami has commented that the respectful obeisances are offered to Srila Vyasadeva, who is the incarnation of Vasudeva. Srila Jiva Goswami has agreed to this, but Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has made a further advance, namely that the nectar from the mouth of Lord Krishna is transferred to his different consorts, and thus they learn the finer arts of music, dance, dressing, decorations, and all such things which are relished by the Lord. Such music, dance, and decorations enjoyed by the Lord are certainly not anything mundane, because the Lord is addressed in the very beginning as para, or transcendental. To this transcendental knowledge is unknown to the forgotten conditioned souls. Srila Vyasadeva, who is the incarnation of the Lord, thus compiled the Vedic literatures to revive the lost memory of the conditioned souls about their eternal relation with the Lord. One should therefore try to understand the Vedic scriptures, or the nectar transferred by the Lord to his consorts in the conjugal humor from the lotus-like mouth of Vyasadeva or Shukadeva. By gradual development of transcendental knowledge, one can rise to the stage of the transcendental arts of music and dance displayed by the Lord in his Rasa Leela. But without having the Vedic knowledge, one can hardly understand the transcendental nature of the Lord's rasa, dance, and music. The pure devotees of the Lord, however, can equally relish the nectar in the form of the profound philosophical discourses and in the form of kissing by the Lord in the rasa dance, as there is no mundane distinction between the two. Pretty elevated subject matter. Canto 2, Chapter 4, The Process of Creation. Before coming here, one of the classes that I conducted in Phoenix was discussing Katyayani Vrata because it was the previous week and so forth. So there was a little bit of reluctance to cover such an elevated subject matter, but because Srila Prabhupada, particularly following our acharyas, covers this topic and here that it's a delicate topic. It'd be a delicate topic because it's misunderstood to be like us, or not, rather than the other way around. We're like him, he's like us. So it's a delicate topic for that reason, because it can be misunderstood. And popular is misunderstanding of such delicate subject matters and imitation of such delicate subject matters and so forth and so on. The term that Prabhupada used regularly was sahajya, one who takes things cheaply. And to take one of the things that one does when takes things cheaply is one imitates rather than serve, and by serving, adopting the mood of the one who one is serving, and thus becoming eligible to enter into a transcendental kind of dealing with Krishna. Now that's it's elevated. The process of raga nuga sadhana bhakti, for those of us that are sadhakas, vidhi or vaidhi sadhakas, it's different. And the transition from vaidhi sadhana bhakti to raga nuga sadhana bhakti, in one sense it's natural, in another sense it's a quantum leap. And then it's made possible, the gradual made possible is through association with persons or a person who is so situated. Because the philosophy you can read in books, and then it's easy to not understand properly that which is elevated, and then get a misunderstanding because one doesn't have the proper understanding, and then do the imitation program. It's easy. Therefore, abundant caution from our founder Acharya to the fledgling, and with flashing red lights, like beware of the ditch. Yet here it is, second canto, and very confidential. So how is in a chapter about the process of creation? sparingly, and because if it's abundantly, then it makes it easier to get a misunderstanding in the imitation program. So fundamental sadhana, Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, is essential for purification. The vidhis, the do's and the do nots of sadhana bhakti are required for preliminary purification or gradual purification, because without purification, even in the association of someone who is a spontaneous devotee, one can easily not understand it or misunderstand it or imitate, and the same problem all over again. So purification, substantial purification of vidhi or vaidhi sadhana bhakti is necessary. Then go the other direction. Okay, if I have been practicing the vidhis and nishedhas of bhakti for some number of years. So when does the bell ring that says, okay, you so it's not like for one who is a spontaneous devotee, they leave behind the rules. They follow the rules. Even in the spontaneous stage. But the exception is if in an expression of spontaneous ecstasy, there's a rule or some rules that are not in the foreground, they seem to be in the background. There's no offense. It's not cheating. It's not neglecting. It's the comparison can be given like a wave in a river. Supposing there's a wave, and the water goes up, and then there's a piece of wood floating in the river, and the wave goes up, and the piece of wood doesn't go up because it's not riding on the wave. But after some time, the wave subsides, and then it's the same level as the wood. That is to say, those who are in a spontaneous devotional service stage, they may not, in a particular circumstance, they may not observably carry out a particular vidhi of Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. They may not. But the governing principle for such a devotee is Krishna is at the center, not taking advantage of my advanced position and violating a vidhi, and when to and when not to, and all of those things. It's in the power of those who are very elevated Vaishnavas to be able to know what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. For example, Radha London Ishwara was a donation. The deity Radha London Ishwara was a donation by a group of men, and there was a leader amongst that group of men who had deities of Radha, 3-foot tall deities of Radha and Krishna, and they contacted Prabhupada and offered to donate them to the temple that was being built. So Prabhupada sent one of his disciples to go examine the deity. And he did, and he came back and informed Srila Prabhupada that, in the course of the conversation, the man who was responsible to this group of Indian gentlemen, that the hand of Radharani had been broken. And Mukunda was the one he sent, and he came back and said, the deity is damaged. And he didn't describe the extent to which it was damaged, but I think this is the reason why they want to donate the deity, because they won't install, because they're followers of that Vidhi. And then Prabhupada decided, I want to go see myself. The long story, he in conversation in Hindi, which the devotees couldn't understand, with the men, the donors, Prabhupada heisted the deities, meaning, in the front, in the vision of everybody, that was on the donor side, Tamal Krishna Maharaj and Mukunda picked up the Krishna deity, put the Krishna deity in a truck, a van, and then Jamuna and somebody else picked up the Radha deity and put the deity in the van. During the course of the conversation, in English, he asked Jamuna, would you be able to repair the Radharani's hand? So she looked closely and she said yes. So he made an exception. And there's a rule, and I don't know, what was the thought process. Prabhupada didn't explain the thought process, that the way that I don't know what it might have been, but he accepted the deity. Now they had planned to give the deity, but Prabhupada didn't give them a chance to back out, because he took the deity. Well, with their full, they within their sight and with their understanding, and whatever they worked out in Hindi. So he accepted the deity. For what reason? Well, there isn't. There may be an explanation. I don't know the explanation, but that there's a vidhi, and with a spontaneous mood of Krishna has come, Radharani have come. They should be honored and accepted. So he, whatever his thought process was, he didn't follow the vidhi. Now, later somebody might say, just see, or something. But the in this case, what's the platform? He's an acharya. He certainly knows the vidhis, and he knows the exception to the vidhis, and it has to do with spontaneous devotion. Interesting example. I've heard that narration in many different ways. Tamal Krishna Maharaj speaks about it, and he speaks about how, because he didn't understand the Hindi conversation, but he just Prabhupada's boldness, and they were happy, whatever the conversation was. But it was like, if they're in the van, and the driver of the van was Mukunda, and Prabhupada said, you kidnapped Radha and Krishna. And Prabhupada chuckled. So that's an interesting example, but there may be other examples. It's not like, let's say, it's a vidhi to not eat meat, and one can go ahead and eat meat, and it's okay. But what attaining the spontaneous platform has a prerequisite, and that is that one is a firm, substantial, prolonged follower of Vaidhi Bhakti. Like here, go the other direction. The six Goswamis, they had their vratas. Sanatana Goswami had his, Raghunath Das Goswami had his, they all had theirs. Sanatana Goswami, his was circumambulating Govardhan Hill. And when he got really old, it was difficult for him to circumambulate Govardhan Hill. So Krishna came and said, Sanatan, you're a perfected soul. You don't need to. But he had a vrata. So he's old and difficult. So Krishna came, pressed his foot on a Govardhan Shila, large flat Govardhan Shila, and a hoof print of a calf, and said, you circumambulate this 3 times, and that's Govardhan Hill, Parikrama. And that same Govardhan Shila that Krishna placed his foot, and the calf placed her foot, is on an altar today at the Radha Damodar temple. So Krishna came and made an impression of his foot. So it was different than Govardhan. But the exception was because Krishna personally came and authorized. Or other expressions of the 6 Goswamis. Their statement is their regulations were like lines in stone. Lines in stone don't move. They're in the spontaneous platform, but they followed all the vidhis. Because that was their devotion, and they were setting an example, and it was not, now that I'm, in such and such stage of bhakti, I don't have to follow the vidhis. It's not like that. So even if one is in the spontaneous stage, they follow. But there may be exceptions. Now, go back to what's in this verse in purport. Sridhar Swami says something, and another acharya says yes. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur something slightly different. Is that permitted? Of course it's permitted. And different angle of vision and different revelation from Krishna to that particular elevated soul. But the esoteric part, because Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, from my experience, is a unique flavor of Rasika Bhakti. He often would take a passage and explain the passage in terms of rasa, even when it's not apparently a rasa issue, it's a philosophical issue or something. That was the lens. That was him, and the lens through which he saw and experienced. So his explanation of, I'll read it again, because there twice. Srila Sridhar Swami has commented that the respectful obeisances are offered to Srila Vyasadeva, who is an incarnation of Vasudeva. Jiva Goswami has agreed, but Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has made a further advance, not in contradiction to, namely that the nectar from the mouth of Lord Krishna is transferred to his different consorts. And thus they learn the finer arts of music, dance, dressing, decoration, and all such things which are relished by the Lord, etc. Some further description. So the representation in the verse is Vyasadeva as the composer or compiler of the Vedas was like nectar. As he spoke, it was like nectar falling from his mouth. Compliments of Vyasadeva or Vasudeva. Then the Rasika Bhakta Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur takes it a little further, not in contrast to, but is even more specific. Krishna and the gopis and their ability, their capacity, their refinement in expression of devotion, music, art, drama, so forth and so on, was the result of the gopis having those affinities and capacities, was the result of receiving nectar from the mouth of Lord of Krishna, Vasudeva Krishna. And then, of course, in Rupa Goswami's writings, he gets into more detail and more detail and more detail. This is Bhagavatam Canto 2, but the detail and detail is very confidential. And if one doesn't have the preliminary, they're not going to understand confidential, or they'll misunderstand confidential and imitate or become mentally, materially agitated, contemplating as if it's, Radha and Krishna, the gopis and Krishna are on the material platform, which they're not. But to fall in the trap of thinking that they are, then one who is not accomplished in Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti can easily get the wrong idea, or will get the wrong idea. Because such a person may or commonly has not gone beyond the bodily conception. You know the verse from Bhagavad Gita. I'm going to read 2 verses. Bhagavad Gita verse, Brahmabhuta prasanatma nasoshati nakangsati samaksarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labhate param. And then devotional service begins. Mad bhaktim labhate. Labhate, one attains or obtains the platform of bhakti. And then when the preliminary, so, preliminary means beyond the bodily conception. Brahmabhuta, stage. Prabhupada makes this interesting, consistently, this interesting contrast between the term Jiva Bhuta and Brahma Bhuta. Jiva means living entity, the para prakriti of Krishna, Jiva. And Brahma Bhuta, he expresses, that's used when it's not just a philosophical understanding, but it's acting on the platform of Brahma Bhuta. Because one has that Brahma Bhuta stage, there's no longer the material. It's not a philosophical concept, it's an experience. No longer hankering, lamenting. That is the sense of fullness. And when that's there, then there's not hankering for something because there's fullness. Or lamenting the loss of something because there's fullness. So it's a difference. And then samaksarveshu bhuteshu, all living entities. Mad bhaktim. At once one attains the platform of devotional service. So the platform of devotional service is elevated. So it's not spoken there. There's sadhana that precedes, a more mature stage. The vidhis, the practice, leads to a more mature stage. But the more mature stage is what, at least conceptually, what bhakti is. Bhakti means. You can say what it isn't and what it is by definition, but the experience of that's devotional service. So are we doing devotional service? Because we may not be at that Brahmabhuta, Prasanatma, Nasosati, Nakangsati, Samak Sarveshu. We may not be at that stage. Yes, it's the preliminary or the prior to the mature stage. So it says prior to the mature stage. It's still bhakti, but the mature bhakti is then a certain nomenclature is used to identify that mature bhakti. Front row seat. Look at this. You saved you a spot. So somehow or another, Prabhupada slipped this very elevated subject in the midst of the process of creation. It's a very elevated subject, not easily understood or easily misunderstood. And so Prabhupada decided include it. It's not like, verse after verse after verse after verse, like a Sahajya might do, amplifying something that's very, very elevated with an audience that doesn't have the capacity to understand the very elevated, and then they think the very elevated is what we're supposed to be doing. Very elevated. And attracted to that which I'm not eligible to enter into. But all the other kids are doing it, so you do it. Imitate, not qualified to imitate. So for whatever the reason, he inserted this, in part because Shridhar Swami commented, Jiva Goswami commented, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur commented. So he's simplifying in simple language, helping us understand, something that's very elevated without dwelling on it. So we may wrongly think, oh, this is what we're supposed to be doing, imitating. It's delicate. I mean, it's delicate. It's an opinion that it's delicate, but it's also delicate because Prabhupada gives this example, like shaving. Now there's safety razors, so it doesn't happen so much. But a razor, and then the old style of razors, and you tighten the thing on the bottom, and the thing closes down. So razors are sharp, and it has a good purpose. Shave your face, make it clean. But if there's inattention, blood. That he using that metaphor. So it's a very sharp instrument, a razor, which is very useful. However, inattention with that very useful can be bloody. So similarly, elevated subject matters are not everyday subject matters. They're not taboo, but because they can be misunderstood, one must handle them very carefully. And so he's included what he's included here. Resting upon our acharyas had some expressions about what this verse is saying. As any one of us become a little more familiar with, along with the text of the Bhagavatam, the commentaries by our acharyas on the text of the Bhagavatam, then it starts to happen, this is my experience, it starts to happen that the personalities of these acharyas start to emerge because they have a consistent kind of flavor, without giving a list of Jiva Goswami is like this, and Rupa Goswami is like that, and Sanatana Goswami is like the other, but they have the flavor of how they see this perspective of how they receive and convey what they've received, because they have a relationship with Krishna that's awakened. And then the relationship with Krishna, some things are revealed, and they at their discretion, they reveal to the general audience. Here's a nice understanding. It's worth dwelling a little bit. The time of the 6 Goswamis in Vrindavan was a politically hostile time, because Aurangzeb, I was just listening this morning, Prabhupada was describing the Govindaji temple was 7 stories tall. But Emperor Aurangzeb lived just down the road, the Delhi Agra road, and he was riding in his carriage one time, and he saw a very tall lamp up in the sky. He wanted to know what was that. He was told it was a Vishnu temple. So he ordered that a Vishnu temple be destroyed because he didn't want to see a lamp. So some soldiers came and demolished the upper 4 floors of the 7-story magnificent structure. And something happened. They had some danger, so they got distracted. They were going to smash the whole thing, but they didn't. They only got the upper 4 floors. And then the remaining 3 floors structures stands. But the point is, it was a very hostile time. And of course, different rulers have different dispositions, but it was a hostile time. Still, Muslim rule overseeing, India, overseeing everything that was going on. And there was literally, from Aurangzeb in particular, but other kings, there was a price on the head of someone that was a Vaishnava, which means you chop the head and bring the head to the king, and the king will give you reward. Price on the head. It was risky, being what they were during the time that they were doing what they were doing. This is all 6 Goswamis. So Rupa Goswami wrote, and he wrote in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu explicitly towards the very, very beginning, I'm writing for the dear devotees of the Lord, because there was no printing press. Who knows even if he would live or the document would live. He was writing for his purification and for sharing with those in his immediate association, the Brijbasis, the residents of Vrindavan. That's who he was writing for. He didn't know whether the manuscript would be preserved the original manuscript is preserved. Yay. That's very special. How did it get preserved? He gave his writing manuscripts to Jiva Goswami, because at the time Rupa Goswami was living off at Tirkadamba. He was living under a tree. What's going to protect manuscripts from the rain or this or that? But he maintained them. Then he gave them to Jiva Goswami, who had a temple. They didn't have a temple, so he had a temple with a boundary wall. So his Rupa Goswami's writings were entrusted to Jiva Goswami. You protect these. And then Jiva Goswami, being who he is, he had copies and hand copies, because there's no printing press. So the original not just the copies, but the original was with Jiva Goswami. And after some time, the original manuscript was given to the Jiva Institute, to because there was technology of how to preserve the leaf pages so they wouldn't crumble and deteriorate. I don't know the technology, but some technology, and it preserved. So the original manuscripts are still preserved, and that's special, because how do you know what Rupa Goswami actually wrote without looking at the manuscript? And that's a problem with some portions of the Vedas. Well, go in the other direction. It's a detail. It's problematic. What really did Vyasadeva write? Who can say? Are there multiple manuscripts or purported manuscripts of Mahabharata? Yes. Are there contradictions between this manuscript and that? Yes. Which is the real one? We don't know. So rather than the history, Madhvacharya, many of you know, Madhvacharya was assiduous in gathering manuscripts, and he kept them in a library. And there was a fire in the library, and many manuscripts were burned and they're lost. He made references, so because he was a trusted personality and his reference XYZ in his writings were made, so at least that much is accepted, although the manuscript was lost in a fire. Anyway, it's wonderful that Jiva Goswami did what Jiva Goswami did, along with his own writing, preserve the original manuscripts of Gopal Bhatta Goswami and Rupa Goswami and Raghunath Das Goswami and Sanatana Goswami. He preserved them. So we have the original manuscripts. Because without that, who knows? Another scholarly person can come along and say, this is it. And we don't know. So that there are differences, back to this verse and purport, there are differences amongst our acharyas that have different perspectives because they have a different relationship with Krishna, and understandings were revealed to them according to their relationship with Krishna. He revealed himself because he's unlimited, so he can reveal himself according to the relationship with the particular devotee, and it's fine. It's fine that Vishwanath says something that's a little different than what Jiva Goswami says and what Sridhar Swami says. They're not in contradiction. It's just, as Prabhupada writes, it's further explanation, which they may not have done, or they didn't do. Then he added the further explanation. And the further explanation is his relationship with Krishna. It's nice. I mean, the standard is just a text, and then the text is Krishna. The Bhagavatam is Krishna, and Krishna reveals himself through the Bhagavatam. And this receiver or that receiver may receive, because Krishna is unlimited. They receive different aspects. And ultimately, it's a relationship with, for us, it's a relationship with Krishna. And the association of those who are intimately connected with Krishna, sharing their experience and understanding of Krishna. It just enriches our relationship with Krishna. And they do so according to rules, because although they may be spontaneous, there's rules. They can't just go off and a creative writing spree and call it a commentary. Not acceptable. They didn't do. But according to the rules, then their realization in alignment with those rules. So it's not a textual, but a sensitive, subtle difference. Anyway, I'm spending a lot of time on what's in this purport. The difference between Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and his exalted predecessors, Jiva Goswami and Sridhar Swami, from one little verse. Now, what are we supposed to do with this one says this and that one says that? You know, one of the things, a little binary processor mind would say, well, if this is right, then that's wrong. And if that's right, then this is wrong. Because it's either 1 or 0. It can't be a 1 and a 0. It can't be two things or multiple things. That's material. And spiritual is in alignment with the rules. There's certainly room for diversity. It's appropriate. There is diversity. Krishna is the source of everything, so he is everything. And so this realization, that realization, consistent with vidhis, it's just fine. When one is qualified. And so how do you become qualified? Follow the vidhis. Strictly, over a prolonged period of time. Purification, 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 under the guidance of qualified persons. Interesting to get off on a topic like this, and when the title of the chapter is The Process of Creation. But it's a detail. It's a detail. Any discussion? (8:30).
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you so much for touching the Vaidya Bhakti and Raganuga Bhakti, the differences. And my question is basically, we all are in Vaidya Bhakti process.
Mm-hmm.
What I heard actually, like from lectures from the different Prabhujis, in order to become to Raganuga Bhaktas, you need to get associated with more on Raganuga, whoever is actually following that Raganuga Bhakti.
What does that mean? Could you unpack what you just said?
So Vaidya Bhakti is something we are following the process, exactly what,
Yes.
right? Raganuga Bhakti is like a spontaneous Bhakti, what?
But you said, you made a statement of how one moves from one to the other.
Yes,
That's
Maharaj.
what I'm asking you to elaborate, because I don't think you said it correctly.
So how one can actually move to Raganuga Bhakti? What I heard is Vaidhi Bhakti is something you can take to only to a certain level of upper, like the spiritual worlds. But Ragana Bhakti is only going to take to Goloka
So
Vrindavan.
how does one move from one to the other?
Yes, Maharaj.
You made a statement. What was your statement?
So, like, what I heard, in order to get into the Raganaga Bhakti, you need to get associated with more of those kind of devotees.
Those kind of devotees.
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay.
How do we, like, understand that? And, like, can you speak more on that?
Hmm. Let me ask you a question. How does bhakti begin? With association.
Yes, Maharaj.
Faith and association. So Krishna sends to someone who has faith, Krishna sends someone who's carrying bhakti. And from that combination of faith and someone who's carrying bhakti, then bhakti can begin, because when received from one who has it, the purposefulness of life, that Krishna should be pleased from one who has that capacity. So the same, Krishna will send. We don't have to go, with a meter and hook up our meter to this one, that one, the other one. How much raga do you have? Like that. Krishna will send. Just like this, in this one purport, there's Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and he has a certain way of experiencing and expressing what he experiences. It's not like, therefore, we should just read Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentaries because he's a Raga Bhakta.
Thank you, Maharaj.
By association of those who have that taste, raga, attraction, affinity, and have the foundation to support it, to sustainable support it. That is, they have for some extended period of time followed the vidhis of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. They have that is still there, even in their other or further more advanced stages. So that's we have a responsibility, each of us, in selecting someone that is genuinely a devotee and someone that's, not. Like from the Bhagavad, Dharma projita kaitavotra paramo near. So kaitava dharma sounds like a contradiction, cheating religion. But the Bhagavatam doesn't have it. At least the announcement at the very beginning, verse number 2. This Bhagavatam kicks out all cheating religion. So if that's kicked out, what's left? Paramo nirmat. So through the text of the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's this assurance from the very, very beginning. And then as that beginning becomes practiced, then we have to take some responsibility that somebody that's a genuinely follower of vidhis and not a sahajya. So therefore, the distinction between the two. So it becomes our responsibility to discriminate. What's that? What is it what does it look like that's genuine? There's a responsibility, because if you're not being careful and cautious and circumspect, then you can get ambushed and fall in the ditch. You know, because there you are in the ditch. And it happens. It happens. So, yes. So Krishna will send. For those who have an inclination, capacity, the credential, the adhikar. And then it's not jumping horses, it's just it's a gradual maturing. Okay.
Thank you much.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. My question is, do we have in spiritual world, do we have a direct relationship with Krishna, or is it through devotees or devotees or devotees? Is it?
What do you think?
I heard both ways, Maharaj. So,
Well, give an example of the first of the two ways. A direct. An example, please.
maybe say in this example itself.
What?
In this example, we have, Sanatana Goswami had a direct relationship with Krishna.
Direct or through? He had a relationship. Direct or through? Through the medium of those who are representing Krishna, and then a relationship with Krishna through the medium of those representing Krishna. So I'm not accepting this example. The relationship that Sanatana Goswami has with Krishna is through the medium of this. It's always through the medium of, through the representative of. With the exception is the eternal associates of Krishna. All the residents of Vrindavan, they're eternal associates of Krishna. Not just gopis. All the so like the cowherd boys. This is a nice example, and a very good example. When the Brahma Vimohan Lila, chapter 13, canto 10, through the assistance of our acharyas, when Krishna understood the intention of Brahma to test him by stealing the cowherd boys, Krishna manifested Maya cowherd boys. So the cowherd boys that Krishna stole were Maya cowherd boys. And then Brahma put them in a cave, and by his mystic power, he put them to sleep. Our acharyas describe Brahma doesn't have the power. His power of mystic slumber can act on a jiva, but not upon an eternal associate of Krishna. So that is, the original cowherd boys are in a unique position. You don't become one of Krishna's eternal associates. You can become an assistant of. And that's the idea of spontaneous devotional service, is one becomes an assistant of. Okay? Say, you don't become Mother Jasoda, You can become an assistant of Mother Yasoda. Anything else?
Maharaj, I have another question about imitation.
About what?
Imitation. We should not be.
Initiation.
Yeah, imitation.
Imitation.
So, how do we know that whatever we are doing is not an imitation? So that kind of.
Yeah. How do you know that you're free from false ego?
Right.
Well, because false ego is the real thing is covered, and I'm at the center. It's very simple. Who's at the center? And one can, do lip service, which is imitation. So then, that where it's not imitation, but it's a real thing, then there's consistency regardless of circumstance. And when it's circumstance specific, then it's imitation. Because it's not, there's not the real thing. The real thing supersedes or surpasses circumstance. Krishna is at the center always.
Thank you.
Or, take out these other verses. Brahma Buddha, it's a very simple verse, extended verse. Na sochati na kangsati. Samak sarveshu bhuti. So those are symptoms. And how can you know? Through symptoms. And how do you know, if there's neither hankering nor lamenting? Circumstances. When someone's in a difficult circumstance, they're consistent. When someone's in a favorable circumstance, they're consistent. Because Krishna is at the center. It's not circumstance created or moved. Fundamental. So observation with symptoms, observation over time. Knowing what the scripture says and observing. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.